Estamos grabando clase del grupo 3 UMCE del día 1 de septiembre del 2021 de Noun Phrase. Okay, we already saw this, and this is the idea of the indefinitely complex noun phrase. I won't say anything else. We review the idea of head, right? And some examples of concord. In this case is subject, verb, concord in both different examples. So I won't say anything else. Then the determinative. When we talk about determinatives, we talk about determiners. We already discussed that idea and the fact that determiners can be subdivided into three different ones, like predeterminers, central determiners, and post determiners, right? Why determiners? Because they will provide the idea of definite or indefinite noun phrase, right? So every single noun phrase can be classified as definite or indefinite. It will depend on the type of determiner, central determiner that we're going to use. So, and here, this slide is about that, and this is another one as well. And here we have a very good summary about definite and indefinite determiners, right? Okay. Then we talk a little bit. We showed this idea of predeterminers, and as you can see, most of them are quantifiers. Let's remember that determiners is not a word class, but I would say an umbrella term for different word classes. So inside of determiners, we will have articles, possessive determiners, selective demonstrative determiners, quantifiers, and then numbers. Thank you. Central determiners, right? Central determiners then are articles. So I won't say much or anything else. I won't say anything else. And then here we have some other central determiners. In this case, we have those are the demonstrative ones. No, those are the quantifiers. The idea of choice relation, nothing new. And here we have central determiners, right? From this point, we were discussing this last week. I think there are some of them quite interesting. So for example, the possessive pronouns as determiners, right? My, our, your, when you use it in the following ideas, have you seen my suitcase? So I'm going to devote a couple of minutes on that. So drawing in purple, right? So I would say my suitcase is red, right? Okay. This is, first of all, this is a clause. Why? Because it is composed of phrases and one of them is a verb phrase, right? Therefore, because of that verb phrase, we have we're labeling this stuff as a clause, right? Second stuff that I know out of that is crap. There you go. Okay. Second stuff, I have now subject, right? Subjects are usually noun phrases. So, and I'm going to find it by asking who plus the verb phrase. That is to say, who's red? My suitcase, right? So I'm going to separate this stuff by doing this. I know this is a noun phrase, subject, because it's the doer of the action, and this another one is a verb phrase verb, because it's the action now. And as you can see, my is a possessive determiner. How do I know that? Quite easily. Well, because suitcase is a noun, head. Therefore, my, as it is a possessive something, right? It is not an adjective, therefore it can't be a modifier. So what could it be? It could be a determiner, right? Let's remember that noun phrases, they have, or they follows a certain pattern. Um, in the middle of the noun phrase, we have the head. Before the head, we have the modifier, and after the head, we also have modifiers. But at the very beginning of the noun phrase, you can have determiners. The other thing, that's really interesting, is the fact that all these modifiers and determiners, they are optional, right? So the only relevant element, in fact, is the head. Um, that's it. Okay. So number three, the possessive pronouns as determiners, right? My, our, your, his, her, its, their. So we call them possessive determiners then. Then we have relative determiners, whose and which, whose car you hit was furious, or which time the meeting should be over. And please be very careful with this. You can have at least two different forms for using them. Let's see, let's remember the lady whose car, right? The lady. Si alguien tiene algún problema que me diga, the lady whose car was hit is here. People who like okay, there we have two different clauses. Okay, the very first clause, the lady whose car was hit, is a really bad example, is here. That thing is a clause. How do I know that? Because there's a verb phrase, right? Now, if you read it, you'll see that there are more than one verb phrase. There are two different verb phrases. So the question is, which is most important than the other? Why am I asking that question? Well, because I need to separate the clause into its valency pattern, right? Last lesson we also discussed the idea of a valency pattern. The lady whose car was hit is here is the very same as if I say she's here. With that idea in mind, then what we have is a noun phrase, subject, which begins in the and it ends in was, right? Therefore, crap, it ends in hit. That's it. Then what we have, she is here, right? So clearly the main verb phrase is, and then we have the other part of it, which is here. I'm going to move this stuff a little bit because we're going to run low out of space. Well, to run out of space. Okay, so the lady whose car was hit is the noun phrase. How do I know that? Well, because I can replace the entire thing by using a pronoun, right? And the doer of the action. It's a subject. How do I know that? Basically, because a subject is an entity, therefore a noun phrase, and this is a noun phrase. One second. Well, because it is before the verb phrase, the main verb phrase, the verbal part of the clause. Therefore, by position and by form, I can say the whole stuff is a noun phrase subject. Now, the most important lexeme inside of this entire phrase is lady, which is the noun head, and then we have the, which is the determiner pre-modifier, but then we have whose car was hit. In this case, as we will see later on, what we have is a clause, right? So we have a clause inside of a phrase. Clauses inside phrases, right? And as I said, clause, I'm gonna give it a name. I would say this is a WH relative clause, acting as a post modifier. Why WH? Well, because it begins with a WH word. And relative clause because it is providing extra information about the head of a phrase. Therefore, those type of phrases, sorry, those clause types, we are going to call them relative clauses. Post modifier because it is after the head. Now, as I said, WH relative clause, then I have to state the phrases. built this clause, right? By which this clause is built. Was he and whose car, right? So the noun phrase subject would be whose car, where whose is a determiner, pre-modifier of car. Crap. Sorry. Of car, right? Which is the noun head. And next to that is very simple. We have the verb phrase verb with two different verbs. Was, which is an auxiliary verb, pre-modifier, and then hit, which is a verb head. Interesting thing is this. Where whose is a determiner pre-modifier. Why? Because of the following example. I will make it faster, right? So here is these are the which are weird. This is an adjective phrase, subject complement, people, and then here we have our clause, and then here we have like, who like what, pineapple pizza, right? This is all. This is another WH relative clause, also post modifier, but it is made by the presence of a noun phrase subject, where we have a relative pronoun, a verb phrase verb with a verb head, and finally we like this. This is a noun phrase object, and for me, pineapple is a noun pre-modifier, and then pizza is a noun head. And the interesting thing goes over here. Now, what's the difference? On the one hand, what we have on the very first example is a noun phrase. How do I know that? Because there's a noun. That noun, which is car, is being preceded by the determiner, the relative determiner, the WH relative determiner, whose, right? Right. Why is it so? Is it so because I already explained it, right? With this square over here, inside of a noun phrase, you have space for a head, right? A modifier in front, a pre-modifier, and then a determiner at the very beginning. But let's remember that all the other stuff which are not heads, they are optional. That is to say, you can erase them. Let's go back to the example. Whose car then? What you have is a determiner and then a noun head, which means that this entire noun phrase then, whose is acting as the very first role. The very first role is the role of determiner. No problem, right? Let's go to the other one. In the second example, who is not a determiner but a pronoun. Why is it so? Because who is the only element, right, in front of the main verb phrase of each relative clause. Therefore, we can think that who is replacing some other information. As it is the replacement of a noun phrase, we're going to call it pronoun, right? Why relative pronoun? Because you don't know exactly whom you're talking about. Is it clear the difference between a WH relative and a WH determiner, and that is to say a relative determiner and a relative pronoun?
Más o menos.
¿Qué parte no?
A ver, por lo que entendí, tendría que la diferencia es el que lo sigue, por decir,
Exacto.
arriba es whose car y el otro viene un verbo, whose like.
Claro, claro. En otros términos, podríamos decir que la diferencia está en que cuando es un relative determiner, requiere de la presencia de un noun head. ¿Sí?
Perfecto, sí.
Y cuando es un relative pronoun, está por sí mismo.
Perfecto.
¿Sí? Esa es la idea.
Sí.
¿Queda claro para todos? Si no me dicen nada,
Profe, yo tenía otra duda.
Dígame.
¿Las relative clauses dan información extra a quién?
Al noun head.
Ahí.
No al sujeto, al noun head, porque la relative clause es parte del sujeto.
Vale.
En realidad, mucho cuidado, las relative clauses son post modifiers de noun heads. ¿Qué quiere decir eso? Que están adentro de la noun phrase y por lo tanto no son solo sujetos, son objetos. A donde haya una noun phrase puede haber una relative clause post modifier. Donde haya.
Vale, profe.
¿Ok? Avanzo. WH determinants, interrogative determinants, negative determinant, no. Todo esto ya lo vimos. Determiners of proof count, no voy a decir nada, todo esto está obvio, ya lo vimos también. Determiners of singular countable, uncountable, I won't say nothing about this. Determiners of proof count nouns, I won't say nothing. Singular count, nothing new. This is a summary. This is the best summary. I told you that. This is the best summary for determinative phrase. Okay, you have to remember this. This is the one you have to study because this is the way in which a determinative phrase is being made, right? The following is the okay. So I have a determinative phrase, then I know that, but these are the things that might happen. Okay, so as predeterminers, you have the words all, both, have, multipliers as central articles, and then post determiners, basically numbers. Okay, that's it. Then we discussed the idea of noun phrase constituents, the pre-modification stuff, which is very simple. I can summarize it. I can provide you a summary out of this quite easily. Inside of a noun phrase, you will have pre-modifiers. You can have pre-modifiers, and these are adjectives, nouns, adjective phrases. That's it. Write it down. Within a noun phrase, you can have pre-modifiers. Those pre-modifiers can be adjectives, adjective phrases, nouns. That's it. Okay, I'm going to move. I won't say much about this. Okay, this is the biggest part today. Noun phrase constituents, post modification. These are the things that might happen after the head, right? As you can see, after the head, we can have further units, right? And we call them post modifiers. Post modifiers then are prepositional phrases, as we already know. Prepositional phrases, right? Non-finite clauses. Relative clauses. And some other stuff they call complements. Okay? Okay. We're going to see them. Therefore, post modification comprising all the items placed after the head. Therefore, prepositional phrases like in the car outside the station, right? Right. The car outside the station. We're going to do them all. The car outside the station. Okay, so the car outside the station, which is the most important word, we know it's car, and then in front of that, we have this determiner pre-modifier, but then we have outside the station. As outside the station comes, or at the very beginning, what we have is a preposition, then we will say this is a prepositional phrase. Therefore, as a phrase, we're going to separate it by round brackets. Let's remember that we separate phrases by using round brackets, and we separate clauses by using square brackets. Therefore, outside the station then is a prepositional phrase The question is this obligatory or optional? That is to say, can I erase it or not? Well, with this context, I don't know that. So I'm going to go for the post modifier, but it can be obligatory. I can't erase it. Therefore, it will be complement. Now, inside of every single prepositional phrase, we will have the very same analysis. Prepositional phrases, they are usually made following this formula, right? Preposition head followed by a noun phrase, which is obligatory, therefore complement. In this case, we have outside, which is our preposition, therefore head. And next to that, we have the station. And the station is a phrase. That's why I'm separating it by using round brackets. And then I'm going to say this is a noun phrase complement, where the most important word is the noun station, which is our head. And then it is preceded by the presence of the determiner, the central determiner, the, right, which is a pre-modifier. In that manner, we have proved that prepositional phrases can be post modifiers. Any question? The following is a non-finite clause. The card. Okay, the following is this another phrase. This is another phrase. The car standing outside the station. How can I prove it's a phrase and not a clause? Well, because I can put another verb phrase after it, right? Now, within the analysis, what we have is this. Well, okay, obviously this is the verb phrase verb. I won't say anything about this. And this is an adjective phrase acting as a subject complement. It is red. The car standing outside the station. It is red. Therefore, what we have is a noun phrase, right? I proved it by replacing the entire construction by the presence of a pronoun. It is red. Then what we have is the car standing outside the station. So obviously, noun phrase subject. And then the most important element would be the lexeme car, which is the noun head, preceded by the determinate pre-modifier. And then I have outside the station. Let's go back to the previous term where we were discussing the idea of finite and non-finite verb phrases, right? It is one of the 8 different variations within a verb phrase, 9 or 8 different variations within a verb phrase. Okay, we will say then that a verb phrase can be finite or non-finite just because of the presence of the idea of tense, right? Therefore, non-finite verb phrases, they will have non-finite verb phrases. They can be of 2 different types, right? Present participle, we know this, or they can be past participle. In fact, they can also be to infinitive, and they can be bare infinitive. Those are the different forms for a non-finite verb, right? Present participles are the one which are written in its ing form, and ed participle are the ones which are written in their ed2 form, right? So I can see the car standing outside the station. There's a verb over there, which is standing. Standing then is a non-finite verb, creating therefore a non-finite verb phrase. And by being a non-finite verb phrase, what we have is a non-finite clause, right? We're going to separate this clause by square brackets. Then we're going to state its name. The name is non-finite ing clause acting as a post modifier. And inside of that, we will have this verb phrase, this non-finite verb phrase standing where? Outside the station. And then the prepositional phrase adverbial with the noun phrase complement. We're going to state them or label them right over here. This is the verb phrase verb made out of a standing, which is the verb head. And next to that, we have the prepositional phrase adverbial of place made out of the preposition head and the noun phrase complement, with the noun phrase complement made out of the determinate premodifier D and the noun head station. ¿Alguna pregunta? No. Maravilloso, continúo. Therefore, as you can see, non-finite clauses, the car is standing outside the station, is our second form for the non-finite clauses as post modifiers inside of noun phrases. As every single non-finite clause, let me tell you that they are not just ing non-finite clauses, but they can also be ed, right? Ed if the verb phrase is composed of a non-finite verb phrase with ed form in past participle. Okay. Then relative clauses. Perhaps these are the most common, I believe. Relative clauses. Wait. With the previous analysis, we have proved the presence of non-finite clauses as post modifiers inside of noun phrases. Let's take a look at the other one. The car that stood outside the station. Okay, here we have another noun phrase, and we're going to provide the analysis then. And what we have is this. So we have the obvious stuff. This is the noun head, and this is the determiner, premodifier. So the whole stuff is a noun phrase subject, right? And then we have that stood outside the station. Here we have our clause that stood outside the station. How do I know it begins in that way? Well, because of the presence of the word that, which is a conjunction. Conjunctions are linking devices. That is to say, they are words which we're going to use in order to link to different units, right? And in this case, what we're linking is a clause to a phrase, right? Therefore, what we have is something called subordination, right? Therefore, that is not just a conjunction, but more specifically is a subordinating conjunction. Subordinating conjunction, right? Within the analysis, then what we have to do is stating the name for this. This is a relative clause, rel clause, acting as a post modifier. And inside of this relative clause, what we have then is the word that, which is a subordinating conjunction symbol, subordinating conjunction, right? And then we have stood, right? Stood is a verb phrase verb made out of the verb head. And then we have outside the station, which is the very same as all the previous examples, right? A prepositional phrase adverbial made out of the preposition head and the noun phrase complement, and then the determiner premodifier with the noun head, right? Right. It's interesting to notice that relative clauses can be of several different types, right? They're just not the ones that begins with the word that, but also with other words like, for example, WH relative, determiners, and WH relative pronouns, okay? Be very careful as well, because the subordinating conjunction that can be omitted in certain places, right? Right. Any questions so far? No? Okay, I'll move on. Then we have complementation, a bigger card than that. And as you can see in that place, we aren't seeing anything new, right? A bigger card than that. I'm gonna show you why. bigger con than that is a noun phrase. A noun phrase, right? Therefore, this is our noun head. This is our adjective pre-modifier. And this is our determiner, pre-modifier. Then what we have is this, is the presence of a prepositional phrase at the very end, right? But the question is this prepositional phrase optional or is it obligatory? Can I erase it, right? The answer comes from the presence of the adjective, right? As we have a comparative adjective, then we need the comparison. That is to say, the comparative adjective bigger requires the presence of the prepositional phrase than that. Therefore, it is not optional, but obligatory. As it is an obligatory element, then, and this obligatory element is not the head, what we have is not a modifier, that is to say, not a post modifier, but what we have is something called complement, right? Which is an obligatory modifier. Crap, sorry. And its symbol is C. Complement, right? And then inside of this, we have the common analysis, and we have our preposition head and then the noun phrase complement, and that's it, right? Another place where you can find this complementation is inside of a prepositional phrase, right? Because there's the preposition and then the complement is the following phrase. Any other place where you can find this? Yes, there are several other places. Like, for example, adjective phrases. Adjective phrases can take true infinitive clauses and prepositional phrases as complements inside of them, right? But we're going to see that later on. Any question? No?
Profesor,
Dígame.
entonces that pasa a ser un noun como un pronombre, una cosa así.
¿Cuál dat?
O sea, bigger cat than that, porque lo separó como preposición y después una noun phrase complement.
Sí, pasa a ser un pronombre. Tiene toda la razón. Es un pronoun head. Así, sí. Because it's replacing the noun phrase. So it's a pronoun. Eso. ¿Alguna otra pregunta antes de avanzar? ¿No? ¿Estamos listos entonces? Qué bueno. Ya. So we're going to select something. We're going to analyze that. Okay. So I'm going to go to the Guardian. Okay, that one. We don't care which one. Cages, I'm happy. Told. Todo esto es solo una oración. Qué buena. Okay. Told MPS on Wednesday that he believed the African capital would remain safe until next year on an assessment based on an assessment by the joint. Okay, we're going to raise that thing. That's it. 15-13, 10 minutos para intentarlo y revisamos. 10 minutos. Volvemos a las 15:23. Eso, chiquillos. ¿Alguna duda de lo que hay que hacer?
No.
Ya, perfecto. Démosle entonces. Muchas ganas, con muchas ganas, con muchas ganas. 15:23, volvemos. Estamos grabando. So he believed this. What is this? The Afghan capital would remain safe until next year based on an assessment by the Joint Intelligence Committee. He believed. Did you say he believed that the Afghan capital would remain? Or do you say he believed the Afghan? What would you say?
I said that.
Right.
That.
Therefore, the name for the for this stuff is a that clause, acting as an object. This is a verb phrase verb, and this is a noun phrase subject. No problem in that place. I'm going to move this a little bit. Okay, we're going to go for the easiest one. Therefore, this is a pronoun head, and this is a verb head. No problem with this. As I said, that clause. Why do I say that clause? Well, because if you read it, you can see that there is an omitted, an elided that at the very beginning of this thing. He believed that the Afghan, right? So that is omitted, but it's there anyway. So what we have is a that clause acting as a object, as an object, right? So all over again, I need to look for the verb phrase. The Afghan capital would remain safe until next year. I would say, this is the verb phrase. Wait, this is a square bracket, not a round bracket, because it's a clause. It comes till this point, right? And I would say this is the verb phrase verb. This is the noun phrase subject. Would remain how? Safe until next year. Right? Right. Now the problem is, what is based on an assessment by the Joint Intelligence Committee? What is that? The first question would be, is this just one single unit based on an assessment by the Joint Intelligence Committee? I believe it is.
Is that a clause? Another clause?
Is another clause.
Okay, I thought that. Yeah.
Right? Is another clause. Do you know the name for this clause?
A ver, adivinando sería como un embedded clause.
Es una non-finite ed clause.
Okay.
How do I know that?
Based.
Yeah, because the verb phrase is a non-finite ed form verb, right? Therefore, it gets the name out of that. Is a non-finite ed clause. Okay, so now we already know this stuff. We're going to do the analysis, right? So as I said, please be very careful with this. As I said, that this is a that clause, right? I need to state what's inside of that clause. Therefore, I'm going to add the information below, not on top, right? So the Afghan capital is the noun phrase subject made out of three things. This is quite easy. This is a noun phrase with a determinate pre-modifier, and then Afghan is the adjective. I think is an adjective or not? Did you look it up in a dictionary? I have to look it up in a dictionary. Afghan, Chilean. No, those are an adjective. Those are adjectives. Those are adjectives. Then next.
Yeah, because capital is often. Yeah.
Yeah. Then I have would remain, which is my verb phrase verb, right? This is the main verb phrase, and would remain, right? So would is my auxiliary verb pre-modifier, and remain is my verb head. No problem. Would remain how? Safe safe until next year, right? How would they remain? Safe. Till when? Until next year. They are two different units. Safe then is an adjective phrase acting would remain like this. Who would remain like this? The African capital is a subject complement. Is giving information about the subject. Safe then is an adjective head. Until next year. Until next year. I had to look it up in a dictionary. Until is a preposition or not? Is it a preposition or not? Preposition, got it. Therefore, prepositional phrase, no problem. Adverbial of time with my preposition until, and next year, my noun phrase complement, right? Next should be an adjective or a determiner, any of those. Adjective, excellent. Next, adjective. And then year is my noun head, no problem. Good. Then based on an assessment by the Joint Intelligence Committee, I can move it. I can place it at the very beginning of each clause. So I can say, based on an assessment by the Joint Intelligence Committee, comma, he believed the African capital would remain safe until next year, right? Therefore, this ED, well, in fact, the name is non-finite. ED clause acting as an adverbial because I can move it. Now, what's inside of it? Based on what? On an assembly, on an assessment by the Joint Intelligence Committee, on an assessment by the Joint Intelligence Committee, on an assessment by the Joint Intelligence Committee, on an assessment by the Joint Intelligence Committee. Okay. Based is my verb phrase, verb made out of a verb head. Based on what? On this. This is a prepositional phrase object made out of the preposition head on and the noun phrase complement and assessment till the very end, which is done by an, which is a determiner pre-modifier, assessment, which is the noun head, and then I have by the whatever, which is a prepositional phrase on an assessment, but I think it is not obligatory. I can erase it. Therefore, it's a post modifier. This prepositional phrase by the joint by preposition head, and then the joint whatever is a noun phrase complement, which is created by the presence of the, which is a determiner pre-modifier, and Joint Intelligence Committee, as it is in capital letters. This is just one single noun, and that's it. Hasta esa parte, ¿algún problema?
El Joint Intelligence Committee es el noun head, ¿cierto?
Sí, es solo un nombre y por eso tiene solo un lexema.
Perfecto.
Lo comprobamos por la presencia de las capital letters at the beginning.
Claro.
¿Alguien algún problema o no hay ningún problema? ¿Ningún problema? Maravilloso. Chiquillos, vamos a tomar el break de 15. Cuando volvamos, revisamos la tarea que era para hoy día, que era este archivo 3, con todas esas oraciones que correspondían. ¿Ya? Son las 15:34. Volvemos en 15 minutos. O sea, a las 15:50 volvemos para la revisión de esas oraciones que quedaron pendientes de la semana pasada. Nos vemos ahí. Resume recording. Estamos grabando. Y personally, I'm always ready to learn.
¿No está compartiendo, profe? Antes.
Oh, perdón. Tururum, tum, tum, tum. I see. Personally, I'm always ready to learn, although I do not always like being taught. Okay, so the very first stuff we're going to do is stating that personally is an adverbial. I am always ready. I am always ready to learn. Okay, this is a very good question. Opciones, ¿qué opciones tenemos? I'm always ready to learn. I am, es un verbo, sí. I am to learn. No, es ready to learn. Ready to. I'm always, I am. Aquí, paraphrase by. Eso, ¿cierto? Entonces, personally es una adverb phrase, adverbial, con un adverb, head, I, noun phrase subject, hecha del pronombre head, am, verb phrase verb, del verb head, y always ready to learn, always ready to learn. This is an adjective phrase, acting as a subject complement. Ready is the adjective, head, and this is an adverb, premodifier. Cuidado con to learn, and this is the thing I told you previously during the lesson. What we have in here is a true infinitive clause acting as a complement inside of an adjective phrase. This is possible, which is made by a verb phrase verb, which is made of a verb head. Although I do not always like being taught. This is also difficult, I think. Although I have to go and look it up on a dictionary, but I am quite positive. This is
Conjunction.
it's in a conjunction.
It's a conjunction. Perdón.
Although it's in a conjunction. I'm almost positive, pero conjunction. Although. Therefore, what we have in here is a relative clause. And I can move it, right? Although I do not always like being taught, personally, I'm always ready to learn, right? So this is a relative clause. Acting as an adverbial, although is a subordinating conjunction. And then I is the subject. I do not always, I don't always like. Like what? Being taught, right? I like, you like, he likes. Sí, así funciona, ¿cierto? Sí, sí. Being taught. Being taught is a clause. And inside of this, we have a verb, a phrase. So what we have is a noun phrase subject made out of a pronoun head, then a verb phrase verb made out of do not, which is an auxiliary verb, premodifier, always is an adverb, premodifier, like is our verb head, and finally do not always like what? This. Therefore, this is a non-finite ing clause acting as an object, which is made of a verb phrase verb with an auxiliary verb, premodifier being, and the verb head taught. Any problem? No? Good. I fished until the sun went down. I crap. Okay, fished. I until the sun went down. Until is another subordinating conjunction. Therefore, I have another phrase, another clause. Sun went down. The sun went down. This is simple. Therefore, it's noun phrase subject made out of a pronoun head, then verb phrase verb made out of a verb head, And this is a relative clause. I fished till this moment, therefore is an adverbial of time. Until is a subordinating conjunction. The is a noun phrase subject with a determiner pre-modifier. And a noun head and went down is a verb phrase verb with a phrasal verb. Therefore, a single verb. Any problem with number 3?
Yo le habría colocado until preposition.
Si fuera preposition, Soledad, muy bien. Because vamos con lo de Soledad primero. Primero, Soledad, be careful with prepositions. Prepositions are difficult. Prepositions. What can you find after a preposition? You can find a noun phrase, right? A noun phrase complement. You can find a non-finite ing clause. You can find a non-finite ed clause. And even you can find another prepositional phrase. Acting as a complement, acting as a complement, acting as a complement. Okay? Okay. Si until era una preposition, ¿cuál de todas estas está después de ella? Ninguna. Why not? Because after until you have the sun went down. And this is not a noun phrase. It's something else. How do I know that? Because there's a verb. If there's a verb, what thing it is then? Is it then? If there's a verb, what thing is it then? It's a clause, right? Good. So is this the sun went down a non-finite ing clause? No. Why not? Because went down is in past simple, therefore it has tense, therefore is finite. So the only possibility you have is that until is not a preposition but a conjunction, and then everything makes sense. Es una explicación bien larga y bien difícil parece.
Sí, 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 porque también me equivoqué y le puse al went down como un non-finite, pero ahí
No, po.
porque no estaba segura si qué lo que era.
Claro, pero si fuera non-finite, piénsalo. Go, went, y el ed2 de go es gone. ¿Cachai?
Mm,
Entonces, went es imposible, nunca va a ser non-finite. ¿Por qué no, profe? Porque para ser non-finite, distinguido alumno, tiene que estar en ed2. ¿Y qué tiene que ver eso? Que went es ed1.
Ah, gracias, profe.
¿Cachai? Que en Grammar, bienvenido a Grammar, el único lugar en el que se ocupa la materia de todos los malditos semestres todo el tiempo. Fabián, profe, uno puede reconocer que hay una conjunction o una clause cuando dentro de una oración sin analizar hay dos verbos. Fabián, términos diferentes. Estamos en la hora, chiquillos, me voy a pasar 3 minutos. El que quiera irse se puede ir. Fabián, adentro de una cláusula hay una verb phrase. ¿Sí? Sí. ¿Qué quiere decir eso? Que una cláusula, mira lo que escribiste, tú pusiste oración, yo digo cláusula, hablamos de otras cosas. En una cláusula, me quedé sin hoja, calmación. En una cláusula, cláusula. Ahí está la frase A, la frase B, la frase C, hasta el infinito. ¿Sí? Sí. Lo único que nos importa para decir que es una cláusula es que una de estas sea una verb phrase. Esa es la obligación. Con eso tengo una cláusula. Profe, ¿y qué pasa si tengo solo una frase y esa frase es una cláusula? Y esa frase, perdón, ¿qué pasa si tengo solo una frase y esa frase es una verb phrase? Entonces tienes una cláusula. El signo pare es una cláusula porque tiene una frase y esa frase es una verb phrase. ¿Sí? Sí. Eso es lo primero, ¿ya? Eso es lo primero. Profe, uno puede reconocer que hay una conjunción o una clause cuando dentro de una oración, sin analizar, hay dos verbos. Una oración es otra cosa, no es una cláusula. Una sentence está hecha de cláusulas. ¿Ya? Es otra cosa. ¿Qué quiere decir eso? I like water because it is good. Así de mala la oración, así de mala la oración. I like water because it is good. ¿Qué es lo que yo estoy viendo? Esto es una sentence. ¿Por qué es una sentence? Porque tiene dos clauses. ¿Cómo sé que hay dos clauses? Porque hay dos verb phrases. ¿Cuáles son las verb phrases? Una, dos. ¿Sí? Sí. La pregunta es, ¿dónde parte la primera cláusula o dónde está la segunda cláusula? Lo que te puedo decir es que la segunda cláusula parte en la conjunction. ¿Cuál es la conjunction? Because. Aquí parte una cláusula y termina acá. Esa es la verb phrase, este es el sujeto noun phrase y este es el adjective phrase subject complement de esta cláusula. ¿Sí? Pero esta cláusula es un adverbial de la cláusula anterior que es más grande. Donde aquí está su sujeto, aquí está a mí, verb phrase, noun phrase, objeto. Lo que te estoy contando es que esta oración es un rectángulo gigante. Aquí tengo mi noun phrase subject. Aquí tengo mi verb phrase verb. Aquí tengo mi noun phrase object. Y aquí tengo mi relative clause adverbial. Y, así y adentro de esta relative clause adverbial está because, bla, bla, bla. It is good. ¿Cachai? No sé si queda claro. Pasé 4
Profe,
minutos.
me quedó mucho más claro. Sobre todo esto, qué buena la pregunta de Fabián, porque de verdad que ahora me quedo con la explicación de ahora, me quedó mucho más claro el tema esa de cómo encontrar la cláusula. Eso,
Habiendo verb phrase hay cláusula.
sí,
Eso es lo
no,
importante.
sí, no, me quedó, porque claro, igual estaba enredada, pero ahora sí, con esta explicación que dio recién. Así que porfa, profe, si puede subir luego esta clase, porque como tenemos la semana de receso y después esta semana para poder practicar
Sí,
y revisar.
Sí, como ya nos quedamos sin rato, voy a pausar la grabación, voy a detener la grabación.